So in my left hand, I've got the game called Tin Helm, and in my right hand, in my right hand, I've got a copy of Dustrunner. I also have a gently accelerating Coors and Whiskey Buzz, but here's the question of the day. Which one am I going to play? Now, in context, they're both in tins about the size of a pack of smokes. They're both designed by Jason Glover of Gnome Games. They're both brisk and lovable, and true of everything I've seen by this designer, they win on the visual handshake and the pace. No matter what title you end up with from his Tin series, and I do believe every hobby gamer should have at least one, you're going to get the haptic tickle of the bite-sized discovery and danger, the charm of miniaturization, all at a high level of craftsmanship. There's some candy cubes, some tiny dice emerge, along with card after card of crisp, high-contrast illustration by Glover. Sometimes he has help, I forget the name, with apologies. And he has an eye for giving shop-worn fantasy and sci-fi characters a memorable note. You get the misspellings on the instruction cards, written in a loquacious tone. They feel like they've been placed in your hand directly from his. They feel like they come from somewhere distinct, which is one of the reasons, or one of the things, that drew me to them when I first started seeing Glover's posts on Twitter a couple of years ago. So, first up, I'm going to talk about the newest acquisition, Dustrunner. I've played it a couple dozen times now. It's a post-apocalyptic race. You're a courier with an important piece of purloined tech and a card that you can semi-customize using various configurations of 3 double-sided cards. You race across another row of cards with a Wasteland Raider mini looming in the rear view. If you get to the endpoint base, you've won. If the Raider mini catches you or you lose your health in map encounters, it's a wrap. The Raiders get your toy and you get turned into beef jerky. So you've got the squeeze of keeping daylight between you and the Raider truck while managing your health, ammo, and fuel through several surprise encounters. Other Raiders, these are the kind that can be fought and defeated. Spy bots, dust worms, and helpful replenishment car mod or extra movement waypoints. My strategy was to try to keep at least a card's length between myself and the primary Raider at all costs. While I was sometimes hurting for fuel, that gave me the cushion, even when I often ran out of fuel and had to fish for more with unwanted encounters, to score the wins I did. But I died a lot. The primary Raider truck caught me often. There's a track where you notch victory points for an endgame score and a stipulation that you can burn your VPs in hand to bend the fortunes of combat your way if you're in a jam. I never took that option. The scoring for the game didn't interest me. Dead or alive is the only thing that mattered on my report, so I defaulted to my own hardcore mode. No victory points to dull the cruel edges of fate. If I died, I just shrugged, nodded sadly at the wadded Dustrunner vehicle in my mind's eye, and performed the game's extremely easy setup all over again. I easily got 10 games in my first session. And I had fun. Glover put a different twist on encounters and combat resolution here, keeping the you have to pick something behind one of the doors doctrine, but substituting a series of card pulls for combat resolution instead of dice, and making each encounter card a single combat or location resolution instead of the multiple feature in a room thing that he did in Tin Helm. It shares a lot of the same DNA as Tin Helm, the first Gnome game I got, which we're going to talk about now in service of comparing the two. So Tin Helm. When I saw Glover developing the components and package for Tin Helm on Twitter, it was one of those I gotta have it moments. I'm not particularly drawn to dungeon crawls or fantasy settings, but the execution of it told me that this would be a unique creature in my modest collection and a good seasoning to have on the spice rack of experience. And it was. Tin Helm puts you in the boots of one of 4 character classes, comboed with 4 professions. Your task: brawl, rest, and hunt your way through a dungeon with the goal of finding 3 shards that will lift a curse. You set up a row of cards and cubes that track your health, items, and other stats. And then you dive in. You have 5 trips through the dungeon to gather all 3 shards or fail the endeavor. And like Dustrunner, Dying somewhere along the way also means you take the L. Every turn, you have to choose between resolving the first or second room in front of you out of a big pile of rooms, and there's icons on the front of each card giving you some sense of what category of trials or goodies exist there. Unlike Dustrunner, combat, which happens quite a bit, is resolved with 2 dice, whose results are subtracted from each other and then modified by monster abilities, special items, or your decision to spend precious energy to deliver bigger shots. There are several ways to stumble across one of these shards, so the general proposition is managing your character's health and resources with enough common sense to hit a variety of locations, making sure the grind of frequent combat doesn't extinguish you. Both of these games are simple, but the decision-scape of Tin Helm has a few wrinkles that provide the difference for me. The little world and its locations have just enough extra texture and variety that, to snag my consciousness for that extra layer of immersion and investment. It's still a beer and pretzels dungeon game, or a beer and whiskey dungeon game in my case, but there are nights here in Starkville that I'm not in the mood for anything else. Cursing the Doom Skull, hailing the Pigman for a turnip for shard trade, or hitting the shrine when you've got your favor track high. These are all part of a carousel of just enough decisions and "oh you rat" or "oh I did it" surprises for me. Which invites the functional question: will Dustrunner steal any table time from Tin Helm? I don't think so. For me, Tin Helm still wins on the first love factor. It's not going to amaze you with its elegance or puzzle solving. It wins on pace and vibes with a couple bright string plucks of idiosyncratic kitchen table novelty. You can solve it if you like, but I'm here for the groove if you follow me. And the little extra fuss and detail in Tin Helm's action gives me that groove. I still maintain that at least one Tin series game should be an option for any solo shelf. He's put out a ton of these. But I'm going to stick with chasing shards in Tin Helm when I've got the appetite for Jason Clover's disarming solo dungeon crawl morsels.
Slap, slap, I'm hitting you smack, smack, I'm sticking you smack lips to stack chips, all with the lyrical technique.